Hey guys, welcome to this video on phases of project management. I am Elton from Edureka, and in this video I will teach you everything you need to know about the phases in project management. But before we get started, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe to our channel. We also have a bell icon so that you can receive our regular updates. You can check out our website for training programs and certifications. This will help you get your job faster. So I want you to think about buying a house. The first thing that you would do is see what exactly you want from that house, right? Maybe it's because you want a personal space, or maybe you want to earn some rent through it, or maybe you're also investing in real estate. After you have a clear idea of why you are doing this, you will then go ahead and talk to anyone who is related to that purchase, be it your parents, your wife, your kids, or anyone else. Thereafter, you would set a budget according to what you can afford and see what best you can make out of it. After that, you would design a blueprint according to what you want your house to look like. You would then purchase all the raw materials to get started with the construction to get it built. After that, you would move into your house, during which you would get your documentations done, like allotment letter, possession letter, sale and purchase agreements, etc. These are some of the activities that go on while buying a house. Now, phases of a project work in the same way. The activities that go on while building a project is what we call phases. And like always, we need a formal definition for this, and that is, a project phase refers to a collection of activities that go on while building a project. Simple, right? But what are the actual project phases? Up first, we have the initiating phase, after which we have the planning phase, execution phase, monitoring and controlling phase, and the closing phase. The initiating phase in our example was when we were realizing why we were building that house. For rent, real estate, etc. That was initiating phase. The planning phase was where we decided on the budget, the blueprint, etc. And after that, we moved on to the execution phase, which was procurement of raw materials and getting it built. The monitoring and controlling phase is common to every phase of this project. This is where you monitor the progress in your project and make sure you do any changes if required. And finally, the closing phase is where we got the documentations of a house done. This is where we got the ownership of a house. Understanding each of these phases can make you a pro. So let us get started.
Now, if you think about phases of project management, you can think of it as something as a roadmap or a flow chart, right? What you basically do over here is follow some steps that have some pre-recorded rules to them. And optimally, if you follow these rules, then you should finish your project without any big problems. This is the advantage of following standardized procedures that are documented inside the phases of projects. So let us look at the first phase of projects, that is initialization. In this phase, you have mainly two tasks, and that is creating a project charter and identifying stakeholders. Now, a project charter is basically a document that is submitted to your sponsors to get some sponsorship or money for your project. And it will contain everything related to that project, like the key deliverables, your project's objectives, the risks associated with the project, and much more. Each of these tasks have specific techniques that can help you complete the task. You need to remember that once you create your project charter, you will have to conduct a feasibility analysis to check how feasible your project is. This basically means that you would have to analyze how exactly your project's success would help your company and how your stakeholders would benefit from it. And that brings us to the second point, which is identifying stakeholders. And a stakeholder is anyone who is affected by the outcome of your project. You should also remember that there are negative stakeholders, and these are people who are negatively impacted by your project. Your task over here would be to identify your stakeholders and convince them of your project so that you can gain support and have more sources of sponsorship. Now, the second phase of project management is planning, and this phase is important because the more time you spend over here, the easier the other tasks would be. Over here, you would plan out your scope, budget, your communications plan, risk management plan, resource management plan, quality management plan, change management plan, and much more. Your aim over here should be to plan out as many variables as possible. The reason for this is because if there are any variations during execution, you would have a procedure that you could readily follow. It would be a real pain if you got caught off guard during the execution, especially if it's an emergency. This is why I would suggest you to spend as much time over here as possible and make sure that you are prepared for anything and everything that would happen during the other phases of the project. The next phase is the executing phase, and this is where you put your plans into action and make sure that everything is going according to plan. In this phase, your tasks may include things like acquiring and managing project resources, implementing your quality management plan, managing the execution of your tasks, making sure that the changes during execution is addressed, and that you could implement the approved actions if necessary. You would also need to maintain a flow of information, and you should communicate with the stakeholders to make sure that they are involved in the development process. After the execution phase, we have the monitoring and controlling phase, and this phase is done throughout the project. This is the phase where you measure your project's performance, the changes to your project, and much more. You would have to verify repeatedly whether the product being developed conforms to the project's quality standards, and you will also have to repeatedly monitor and assess risks and make sure to keep an issue log and review it whenever possible. If you have any mistakes made along the way, you would have to recognize them, analyze what went wrong, and you should make sure that you have a plan in place if ever this issue arises in the future. And finally, in the end, we have the closing phase. And over here, you would obtain the acceptance of your project's deliverables and transfer the ownership of these deliverables to whomever it may concern. You need to follow standard procedures to obtain financial, legal, and administrative closure. You would also have to create a final project report that has all the details of your project, be it the documentation of the project itself or even the procedures that went into the development of that product. Everything will be recorded over here. You also need to gather all the lessons learned during the development of this project and get feedback from your stakeholders. This is done not only to fulfill statutory requirements, but to also make sure that your next project doesn't repeat the same mistakes, and that it can also be completed more efficiently with better quality. And guys, this covers all the phases of your project. I hope you understood everything in this session and had a really good time. Make sure to stay tuned because we have a lot more topics like this coming out. So until then, happy learning.
I hope you have enjoyed listening to this video. Please be kind enough to like it, and you can comment any of your doubts and queries, and we will reply them at the earliest. Do look out for more videos in our playlist and subscribe to Edureka channel to learn more. Happy learning!